My friends, let's sit with this picture for a moment. You tried everything, calls, messages, proving your loyalty again and again. You poured out your love like water into a desert, and still they turned their face away. You gave patience, forgiveness, long nights of explaining yourself, hoping one more effort might break through the wall. But instead, what you met was rejection, indifference, even betrayal. You kept telling yourself, if I just give a little more, maybe they will see me, maybe they will choose me. Yet all of that effort felt invisible, like shouting into an empty canyon where the echo never comes back. And so finally, something inside you broke, not in weakness, but in clarity. You stopped. You went silent. No more chasing, no more proving, no more explaining yourself to someone who was never listening. Just silence. At first, silence feels like defeat. It feels like stepping into a dark room after all the noise, only to be swallowed by the stillness. You wonder, did I just lose everything? Did they win? Am I nothing to them now? Folks, I need you to hear me. That thought is the lie. The world has told you that silence means you've surrendered, that you've given up, that you've walked away powerless. But what if I told you silence is not the end? What if I told you silence is the first move that flips the entire game in your favor? Because after silence, there is one choice that matters, one stoic step that changes everything, and it's the step they never saw coming. Think about the storm, when the thunder roars, when the lightning strikes, when the winds howl against the windows. It feels like chaos is in control. But the real shift, the real cleansing, the real transformation, it doesn't happen in the noise. It happens in the quiet after, when the air is still, when the ground is soft enough to grow, when the world feels strangely tense with new possibility. That's what your silence is. To them, it looks like nothing. To them, it looks like you've disappeared. But my friends, silence is not nothing. It is the soil where strength grows. It is the calm before the change. Seneca once said, sometimes even to live is an act of courage. And is that not what silence is? To resist the urge to beg, to hold back when every nerve in your body wants to speak. That is courage. That is power. And let me break another lie for you, because the world has been feeding you poison. They say silence makes you weak. They say if you don't fight for someone, you never mattered. They say if you don't speak, you're forgotten. But here's the truth. They are terrified of your silence, because silence forces them to face themselves. Anyone can argue. Anyone can scream. Anyone can fill the room with noise. But it takes a strong, unshakable soul to sit in silence and let others wonder what's happening inside. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Your silence is not a retreat. It is you taking back control of your mind. My friends, when you went quiet, you didn't vanish. You began again. Your silence is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of their confusion, their doubt, their regret. And while they scramble in that emptiness, you grow. You rise. You become stronger than you ever were before. So don't look at silence as defeat. Look at it as your shield, your discipline, your first declaration of power, because from here, everything shifts. So here's where I want you to stop just listening and actually step into this truth. Don't let these words pass through you like any other advice you've scrolled past. Own it, claim it. Say it with me right now, out loud or in your heart. Silence was my first step to power. Don't just whisper it, declare it, and then write it in the comments, because when you put something into words, you carve it into your own reality. That comment isn't for me, it's for you. It's you taking the first action of a stronger life, a disciplined life, a life where you're no longer begging to be seen, you're commanding to be remembered. And while you're there, hit that like button, not as some casual click, but as a decision. It's you saying, yes, I choose power over weakness. Yes, I choose silence over chaos. Subscribe if you haven't already, because if you think this is where it ends, you're wrong. This is just the doorway. What comes next will show you exactly how silence turns the tables in your favor. Stay with me, my friends. Don't slip back into the old habits. This is the turning point. You've already made the first move. Now let's take it further. Number 1, the withdrawal shock. My friends, let's step into the very first moment after you've gone silent, because this is the place where everything begins to shift. When you decide to stop chasing, to stop explaining yourself, to stop pouring your energy into someone who could not see your worth, you might think nothing will happen. You might believe they will simply carry on with their life, unaffected, while you are left sitting with the weight of rejection. But the truth is, silence always leaves a mark. Your sudden absence does not slip by unnoticed. It is a shock to the system, a ripple in the rhythm of their days. Their brain had been wired to expect you, your texts lighting up their phone, your energy filling the space between them, your devotion like background music that played so constantly they didn't even realize how much they relied on it. And then suddenly, it's gone. No sound, no effort, no presence. The silence hits harder than you can imagine. Think of it like a musician playing a familiar song. Every beat, every note is expected, and the melody carries you effortlessly. Then suddenly, in the middle of that song, the beat is gone. The silence is jarring. It doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel complete. That's what your silence does to them. It breaks the rhythm they were used to. It removes the comfort they didn't even realize they depended on. To you, it may feel like you are fading into nothingness, but to them, it feels like losing oxygen. What was once taken for granted is suddenly missing, and the mind doesn't know how to adjust. And here's the psychology of it, folks. The human brain is built on patterns. We don't just notice the things we love. We get addicted to the things that repeat. A message at the same time every day, a check-in when they needed it, a laugh, a call. These things become habits. Your presence was a habit in their life, whether they respected it or not. And when that habit breaks, the brain feels unsettled. It protests. It keeps reaching for what is no longer there. Your silence doesn't blend into the background. It stands out like a missing piece in a puzzle. And the irony is this: the more they thought they didn't need you, the more they now feel your absence pressing down on them. But I know what you're thinking, my friends. You're sitting there asking yourself, what if they don't care? What if they're relieved? What if my silence means nothing to them? This is the fear that gnaws at you in the first days. It feels like abandonment. It feels like they tossed you aside and never looked back. And yet, here's where I want you to pause. Relief is not the same as peace. At first, yes, they may feel light, as if the air has cleared, because you are no longer there demanding space in their life. But Carl Jung once wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." And that is exactly why silence unsettles them so deeply. Because when you stop showing up, when you stop filling the air with your loyalty and devotion, they are left alone with themselves. No more distractions, no more comfort, no more background music, just the echo of their own emptiness. It's like when you sit in a room where a clock has been ticking for hours. You grow so used to the sound that you stop noticing it, but the moment it stops, the silence feels wrong. Your ears strain for the sound, your mind wonders why it's missing, and the absence becomes louder than the presence ever was. That's exactly what your silence does. It makes them aware of what they had, because it is no longer there. And the very same energy they once ignored suddenly becomes the thing they can't stop noticing is missing. Now, let's be honest, folks, this is not easy for you either, because silence doesn't just challenge them, it challenges you. Every part of your body wants to break it. Your fingers itch to send that one message, to ask how they're doing, to remind them you're still there. Your mind tells you, maybe if I reach out one more time, they'll finally understand. Maybe if I just try again, things will change. This is the test. This is where most people fail. Because silence requires discipline. It requires the courage to hold your ground when everything inside of you screams to give in. But this is why silence is power. Because by holding it, you prove to yourself that you are stronger than your impulses, stronger than your longing, stronger than the chaos they pulled you into. And here's the beauty of it. While you sit in that silence, uncomfortable and restless, you are actually becoming stronger. Every hour you resist the urge to reach out, you reclaim a piece of your own dignity. Every day you remain quiet, you pull your energy back into yourself. You are training your soul in self-mastery. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And silence, my friends, is the battlefield where that mastery is forged. Meanwhile, on the other side, they are stumbling. They are restless in ways they can't even admit. They scroll their phone and wonder why your name hasn't appeared. They pass by the places you once went together and feel the emptiness heavier than before. They might laugh with friends, they might post pictures to show how happy they are, but underneath, the rhythm is broken. And no matter how much they pretend, their mind is pulled back to the silence, again and again, until it becomes unbearable. So don't ever think your silence is invisible. Don't ever think it goes unnoticed. Silence is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of power. It is the space that forces them to confront what they've lost. It is the pause that unsettles their soul. It is the void that cannot be filled by anyone else. Hold your silence, my friends, and understand the shock it creates is not your weakness, it is your strength. It is the first crack in their pride, the first shift in their balance, the first step in turning the story around. While you master yourself, they are losing themselves. And in that exchange, the power has already begun to move. Say it with me now, out loud or in your heart. My absence is louder than my presence. Write it in the comments so it burns itself into your mind. That comment is not just words. It's your declaration that you are no longer the beggar of love, but the master of your own strength. Press that like button to seal it in, to tell yourself that you choose silence as your power. And subscribe, because this is only the beginning of the journey. Stay with me, folks. What comes next will show you just how unstoppable your silence really is. Number 2. The echo chamber of regret. My friends, here is where the silence begins to do its deepest work, not in your voice, not in your actions, but in their mind. Silence is not just an empty space you've left behind. It is a mirror, an echo, a weight they cannot escape. You see, when you were there, when you were giving your energy, when you were the one checking in, they never had to sit with themselves. Your presence filled the air. Your loyalty gave them cover. Your voice kept their world from sounding empty. But once you went quiet, once you withdrew completely, they were left in the company of the one person they can never outrun, themselves. And that, my friends, is where regret begins. At first, they may shrug it off. They tell themselves it's fine. They even pretend they expected this. But late at night, when the distractions fade, when the phone stops buzzing, when there's no one left to impress, their mind drifts back to you. They replay your last moments together like a song stuck on repeat. The last words you said, the tone in your voice, the look in your eyes. They go over the final message, dissecting each sentence, asking themselves questions they never thought they'd care about. Why did they stop reaching out? Did I push too far? Did they finally see me for what I really am? Did someone else take my place? These questions gnaw at them, not because they want to face the truth, but because silence has left the story unfinished. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect. The human brain cannot let go of unfinished stories. We crave closure, we crave neat endings, and when we don't get them, we obsess. And this is exactly what your silence does. By walking away without a dramatic goodbye, without a final fight, without spelling everything out, you left the ending open. You denied them the satisfaction of the last word. And now their mind becomes an echo chamber, bouncing your absence back at them again and again. It's like a movie stuck on pause, but they keep pressing play in their head, trying to find the scene that never arrives. Think about it. Have you ever had a conversation cut off in the middle where you kept rehearsing what you should have said, what you could have explained? That's what's happening to them right now. Except they're not rehearsing their own lines, they're replaying yours. The silence you gave them has become louder than any argument could have been. And the irony is, the very person who once dismissed your voice is now haunted by the absence of it. And I know what you're thinking, my friends. You're asking, but what if they don't care? What if they've already moved on? Let me tell you this, nobody moves on cleanly from a story without an ending. They can cover it up with pride, they can bury it under distractions, but the mind betrays them. The intrusive thought comes back at the worst possible times. A song plays and reminds them of you. A place you once went together pulls your image back into their memory. A phrase someone else says sounds like something you used to whisper, and in that moment, their mind can't push you away. You're there, alive, louder than ever. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." That's what your silence does. It drags the unconscious into their awareness. It forces them to notice the way you still live in their thoughts, no matter how much they deny it. They can act strong, they can act untouchable, but in the quiet moments they are wrestling with ghosts. They are battling with the memory of you, and the more they try to push it down, the stronger it rises. And here's the lesson for you. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to send one more message. You don't need to prove one more time that you mattered. The silence is already doing the work. It's working in their mind like a slow echo that refuses to fade. And each echo is proof, not of their strength, but of their regret. So don't doubt the power of silence. Don't think you've been erased. The truth is, you're replaying in their head, whether they want you there or not. And each replay is a reminder. They lost someone unforgettable. Say it with me now, folks. They replay me because I am unforgettable. Write it in the comments so it becomes carved into your mind. Press that like button as your seal of strength. And subscribe, because this is only the second step. We are only beginning to uncover how silence flips the entire story in your favor. Stay with me, because the echoes are only going to get louder. Number 3. The cracks in their pride. My friends, here is where the mask begins to slip. At first they put on a show. They laugh, they brag, they tell their friends, "See, I knew they'd stop chasing. I knew they'd finally give up." They speak with confidence, as if your silence means victory for them. To the outside world, they play it cool. They post the pictures. They smile a little too wide. They act as if nothing has shifted, as if your absence doesn't weigh on them at all. But pride, my friends, is paper thin. On the surface, it looks strong, but underneath, silence is already working its way in, and slowly it begins to gnaw at them in places they can't admit. Because while they laugh in public At night, in the stillness, the performance ends. They check their phone when no one is watching. They scroll back through old conversations, reading your words in secret, replaying the memories they pretended to dismiss. They tell themselves it's just curiosity, just boredom. But deep down, it's not. Deep down, it's the silence pressing against them, reminding them of what once was, reminding them of what they lost. They want to know if you've reached out, if your name will light up their screen, if maybe you've broken the silence first. And when it doesn't come, when the phone stays dark, the cracks spread deeper. Silence is like water, my friends. Even the strongest wall eventually weakens when water seeps in. It doesn't crash, it doesn't roar, it doesn't demand attention. It slides in quietly, invisibly, patiently, finding every weakness in the stone. That's your silence. They built their pride like a wall, convincing themselves they could stand without you, convincing the world they are untouched. But water doesn't need permission. Your silence doesn't need to shout. It creeps in through the smallest cracks, the late-night doubts, the restless thoughts, the sudden memories they didn't want to face. And before long, their wall doesn't feel so solid anymore. And I know what you might be thinking, my friends. If their pride is so strong, how can I be sure it's cracking? What if they really don't care? What if my silence means nothing to them at all? But here's the truth. Pride is not strength. Pride is a mask, a performance, a way of covering fear and insecurity. True strength doesn't need to brag. True strength doesn't need to prove. So when they go out of their way to show you and everyone else that they're unbothered, that is already proof the silence is working. If it meant nothing, they wouldn't need to say anything at all. Their denial is the confession. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist persists." And that is exactly what's happening here. The more they resist the idea that your silence bothers them, the more it grows inside. The harder they try to laugh it off, the heavier it feels when they are alone. They can't erase the weight of what you gave them, no matter how hard they fight against it. Your absence has already found its way into their soul, and even if they deny it, it will persist. It will gnaw. It will grow. And here's what you must remember. You don't need to chase. You don't need to break the silence to prove your worth. The cracks in their pride are not your responsibility to expose. They reveal themselves over time. Every laugh that sounds a little forced, every smile that feels a little too wide, every night they scroll back through your old words, those are the cracks forming. And the longer you hold your silence, the deeper those cracks will spread. So don't be fooled by the show. Don't let their pride convince you that your absence has no impact. The truth is, pride can pretend, but silence always finds its way in. Say it with me now, folks. Their pride cannot erase my impact. Write it in the comments so it becomes etched into your mind. Press that like button as your way of claiming this truth. And subscribe if you haven't yet, because we're not done here. The cracks are only the beginning, and what comes next will shatter the wall completely. Stay with me. Number 4, the comparison spiral. My friends, let me take you deeper into what happens after the cracks in their pride begin to spread. Pride can only hold them together for so long before the emptiness creeps in, and when it does, they do what so many people do. They go searching for distraction. They think a new connection, a fresh face, some laughter with someone else will erase the silence you left behind. They convince themselves that if they fill the void quickly enough, they won't feel the sting of your absence. And for a moment, it even feels like it works. They laugh louder than usual. They post their smiles online. They act as though this new person is everything they've been waiting for. But deep down, something feels off. Something is missing. Because no matter how hard they try to bury it, the mind has a way of comparing. Psychology tells us this: the human brain can't help but measure new experiences against old ones. It's how memory works. The text messages don't carry the same warmth as yours did. The laughter sounds different, lighter maybe, but not as genuine. The conversations don't hold the same depth, the same spark, the same unspoken connection they once felt with you. And the harder they try to force the illusion that it's better, the more obvious it becomes that it's not. The silence you left behind only amplifies these differences, making every attempt to replace you feel like an imitation. It's like losing a diamond and trying to convince yourself that a piece of glass shines just as bright. To the untrained eye, maybe the glass sparkles, maybe it looks good in the light. But in the quiet moments, when they hold it in their hands, they know the truth. It doesn't carry the same weight, the same brilliance, the same rarity. That's what happens every time they look at someone new and try to believe they've moved on. The comparison is automatic, and it is brutal. Your presence set a standard, and everything else feels hollow in its shadow. And I know what you might ask yourself in those dark hours. What if they really did replace me? What if they're happier now? But let me tell you something, my friends. Replacement is a fantasy. You can replace an object, but you cannot replace a soul. Every person carries their own energy, their own rhythm, their own light. And once they've had yours, there is no duplicate. They can chase it in other people. They can search for it in shallow connections, but what they'll always find is the echo of you. And that echo only makes them realize what they lost. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." And isn't that exactly what happens here? When the little things about someone new start to irritate them, when the connection doesn't feel right, when the spark isn't strong enough, they're forced to see what they once had with you. They see the safety you created, the loyalty you gave, the comfort you brought into their life, and the contrast becomes unbearable. Because the truth is, nothing compares. Not the laughter, not the touch, not the attention. And here's where the spiral begins. The more they compare, the more restless they become. They try harder to make it work with someone new, only to feel emptier. They search for your presence in faces that cannot hold it. They look for your energy in places it doesn't exist. And the harder they look, the deeper they spiral into the realization that you are irreplaceable. So don't ever doubt your power. Don't ever think for a moment that silence made you vanish from their life. Silence didn't erase you. It made your absence louder. It made your memory sharper. It made every attempt to replace you feel like failure. And while they chase after glass, you remain the diamond they can never forget. Say it with me now, folks. There is no replacement for me. Write it in the comments so it carves itself into your truth. Press that like button as your declaration of worth. And subscribe, because this journey is only unfolding. What comes after the comparisons will open their eyes even further. Stay with me. Number 5. The mirror of silence. My friends, here is where the silence turns into something even more powerful than absence. It becomes a mirror. When you were present, when you kept giving, when your love flowed, even in the face of rejection, you were shielding them from themselves. Your effort, your loyalty, your forgiveness, it acted like a blanket covering their flaws. They could ignore their own cruelty, dismiss their neglect, even excuse their betrayals, because you were still there. You were the proof they used to convince themselves they weren't as cold, as careless, as selfish as they really were. But when you stepped back, when you went quiet, when you refused to keep feeding the fire, the cover was stripped away. Now, there is nothing left to hide behind. And what's left staring back at them is the raw truth of who they've been. This is why silence shakes them, my friends, because it doesn't argue, it doesn't accuse, it doesn't write long paragraphs explaining what they did wrong. It simply reflects. Like standing in front of a cracked mirror, they see themselves as they are, not as they pretend to be. Every cruel word they spoke, every moment they ignored you, every time they took your love for granted, it comes back to them in the silence. There is no distraction anymore, no effort from you to blur the edges. The mirror shows every flaw, every weakness, every choice they would rather forget. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." And isn't that exactly what your silence forces them into? They told themselves you were the problem. They painted you as too emotional, too loyal, too demanding. But now, with you gone, the irritation they feel isn't with you. It's with themselves. They don't want to admit it, so they lash out, they distract, they pretend. But late at night, when it's just them and the mirror of silence, the truth creeps in. And the truth is this: they pushed away someone who actually cared, and what they're left with now is emptiness of their own making. Picture that cracked mirror. At first, they glance at it and laugh it off. That's not me. That's not real. But the more they look, the more the cracks spread. They can't unsee what's there. They see the arrogance, the pride, the lies they told themselves to stay in control. They see the way they used your loyalty as a safety net. And the silence makes that image impossible to escape. No matter how much they run, the mirror follows. No matter how much they deny it, the reflection remains. And this, my friends, is why silence is more powerful than words. If you had shouted at them, if you had begged them to change, they could have dismissed it as your weakness. They could have argued, twisted your words, made you out to be the problem. But silence leaves nothing to fight against. Silence forces them to wrestle with their own conscience, and that is a battle they cannot win. I know what you're asking yourself right now, but what if they never admit it? What if they never apologize? What if they never show me the regret I want to see? And you're right, they may never speak it out loud. Pride might keep their lips sealed. But silence isn't about what they show. It's about what they feel when no one else is looking. And make no mistake, the mirror doesn't lie. They see it, they feel it, they carry it, even if they never confess it to you. So understand this. You don't need their admission. You don't need their apology. The mirror of silence has already done the work. They are confronted with themselves in ways your words could never reach. And while they wrestle with the truth of who they are, you rise into the truth of who you've always been: loyal, rare, unforgettable. Say it with me now, folks. My silence reveals their truth. Write it in the comments so it becomes etched into your mind. Press that like button if you're ready to stop explaining yourself and let silence do the work. Subscribe if you haven't, because we're only going deeper into how this transformation unfolds. Stay with me. The mirror is just the beginning. Number 6. The shift of power. My friends, let's talk about the moment everything begins to turn, the shift of power. For so long, you were the one reaching out. You were the one sending the late-night messages, pouring out your heart, waiting for a reply that came too late or didn't come at all. You were the one trying to hold the connection together, chasing, proving, hoping. And in those moments, it felt like they held all the cards. It felt like they had the power, simply because you wanted them more than they seemed to want you. But silence changes that story. Silence tilts the scales in a way words never could. Because when you pulled back, when you stopped giving your attention, when you dropped the rope you had been pulling with all your might, they stumbled. At first, they thought it was nothing. They assumed you were just tired, or that you'd be back in a day or two. They convinced themselves the pattern would return, because it always had before. But days pass, then weeks. The silence stretches, and suddenly they feel the imbalance. The ground beneath them doesn't feel steady anymore because what they depended on, your effort, your loyalty, your steady presence, is gone. Think of it like a game of tug-of-war. You've been pulling with everything you had, straining, sweating, giving all your energy to keep the rope from slipping away. And then, in one decisive moment, you let go. What happens? The other person stumbles. They lose balance because their strength was never real. It only existed in resistance to yours. That's what your silence does. It exposes that their sense of control was propped up entirely by your chasing. Without it, they are left wobbling, uncertain, restless. And this is where psychology reveals the truth, my friends. Attention is power. When you give someone your focus, your energy, your devotion, you elevate them. You feed their ego. You make them feel important. And the moment you stop, the moment you reclaim your attention, the power returns to you. They may not say it out loud, but it shows in the cracks, the sudden late-night visits to your page, the accidental like on a picture they had no business scrolling back to, the short messages that come out of nowhere. Hey, how have you been? These aren't random accidents. These are signs that your silence has unsettled them, signs that they're trying to get back a piece of the energy they once took for granted. But here's the beauty of it. Now the roles are reversed. You're no longer waiting by the phone. You're no longer refreshing the screen to see if they've noticed you. They are the ones wondering, questioning, searching for clues. They are the ones checking to see if you've moved on, if someone else has claimed the loyalty they once dismissed. And even if they never admit it, even if pride keeps them quiet, the shift has already happened. They feel it every time they reach for the rope and find nothing in their hands. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That is exactly what you've done, my friends. By mastering yourself, by holding your silence when it would have been easier to break it, you've reclaimed your power. You've proven that you don't need their validation, their attention, their crumbs of affection to stand strong. And because of that, the balance of the story has flipped. So don't ever doubt what's happening behind the mask. Don't let their pride fool you into thinking your silence doesn't matter. It matters more than words ever could. You've already shifted the weight. You've already turned the dynamic upside down. And the longer you hold, the stronger you become, while they grow more restless, more uncertain, more desperate for the attention you no longer give. Say it with me now, folks. The power is in my silence. Write it in the comments so it becomes etched into your mind. Press that like button as your declaration of strength. And subscribe, because this shift of power is only the beginning. The silence will take you even further. Stay with me. Number 7. The storm of regret. My friends, let's step into what happens when silence stretches beyond days, beyond weeks, into the kind of time that cannot be ignored. At first, they convince themselves they are fine. They tell the world they are unbothered, that they've moved on, that your absence means nothing. They laugh, they distract, they even chase new people to cover the void. But silence has a way of wearing down the strongest masks. The longer it holds, the louder another voice begins to whisper, the voice of regret. Regret does not announce itself with noise. It doesn't burst through the door demanding to be seen. It begins quietly, almost invisibly, creeping in around the edges of their life like a small storm cloud drifting across a clear sky. At first they barely notice it. A fleeting thought here, a memory there. But as the weeks pass, that storm cloud grows darker, heavier, and soon it looms over everything they do. They can no longer laugh without remembering the way you used to laugh with them. They can no longer feel safe without recalling the loyalty you once gave so freely. They can no longer enjoy the company of someone new without realizing that the connection doesn't hold a candle to what they lost with you. This is the storm of regret, my friends. It builds slowly, but once it gathers strength, it blocks out the sun. They begin to replay everything you gave them, the patience you showed when they were difficult, the loyalty you offered when they didn't deserve it, the love you poured out even when they pushed you away. At first, they remember it with arrogance, saying to themselves, "Yes, they cared for me deeply." But then the thought twists into something heavier. What if I pushed away the only person who truly cared? That question is the lightning strike in the storm. It flashes through their mind suddenly, blindingly, and they cannot unsee it. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This is how regret works. For a while, it stays hidden beneath pride, buried under excuses. But your silence forces it upward, into consciousness, until they can't avoid it anymore. They begin to see their own choices not as victories, but as betrayals. Betrayals not just of you, but of themselves. Because deep down, they know the truth. Loyalty like yours is rare. Patience like yours is priceless. Love like yours is not easily found twice in a lifetime. And so the storm intensifies. They go through their days, but every little reminder carries your echo. A familiar place you once went together suddenly feels heavy with memory. A song they once heard with you now plays like a soundtrack of loss. Even their friends notice the change, that their smiles are thinner, their laughter shorter, their eyes drifting off into thoughts they won't admit aloud. That's regret, my friends. It seeps into every part of their life until it can no longer be hidden. But here is what I want you to remember. This storm does not destroy you. It destroys their illusions. While they are trapped under clouds of regret, you are walking in your own sunlight. While they are haunted by what they lost, you are becoming stronger, steadier, more grounded. That is the beauty of silence. It transforms you while it torments them, and no matter how hard they fight it, the storm only grows heavier until regret is the only thing they can feel. So when your heart tempts you to think they've forgotten you, when your mind whispers that your silence meant nothing, remember this: regret always comes. It may come late, it may come quietly, but it always arrives. And, by the time it takes hold, it will be too powerful for them to shake off. Say it with me now, folks. They regret losing me. Write it in the comments so it becomes anchored in your mind. Press that like button as your declaration of strength. And subscribe if you haven't already, because this storm is only one part of the story. What follows, regret, will change everything. Stay with me. Number 8. The inevitable return. My friends, this is the part you've been waiting for, the point where silence does what chasing never could. At first they resisted it, they laughed, they bragged, they pretended to be fine. Then the cracks began to show. Then the comparisons started. Then the storm of regret rolled in until the weight was too much to carry. And finally, silence pulls them back. The messages arrive, the "Hey stranger," the "Just checking in," the "I saw something that reminded me of you." They act casual, like it's nothing, like they just happen to think of you. But you and I both know, my friends, these are not random. These are not coincidences. These are breadcrumbs dropped by someone who cannot silence the echo of you in their mind. It isn't about bravery. It isn't about a sudden realization of love that hit them out of nowhere. It is about the slow, steady gravity of your absence. It's the silence pressing against their chest, the regret weighing on their soul, the memories they can't escape. People don't return because it's convenient. They return because their mind refuses to let go. Psychology tells us that human beings are wired to circle back to what feels safe, what feels real, what feels alive. And you, my friends, were all of those things. You were the anchor in their storm. You were the one who stayed loyal when the world was shallow. You were the one who gave them a kind of love that couldn't be faked. And when that disappears, when silence stretches long enough, the pull back to you becomes inevitable. Think of it like this: silence is not an empty room, it's a magnet. The longer it holds, the stronger it draws. They can fight it, they can distract themselves, they can run to 100 different faces, but in the end, the magnet wins. They are pulled back not because they chose to, but because silence forced them to see what they lost. It stripped away the noise, it exposed the truth. It left them with no illusions, no excuses, no distractions strong enough to erase you. And so they return. And when they do, remember this: it wasn't your begging that brought them back. It wasn't your explanations or your long messages trying to prove your worth. It wasn't noise at all. It was silence. It was your refusal to chase, your discipline to hold steady, your strength to let the absence do the talking. That is what flipped the story. That is what made them realize. That is why they come back. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." And isn't that exactly what you've done? You didn't match their cruelty with cruelty. You didn't match their pride with pride. You chose silence, and silence became your shield, your strength, your power. And now it has drawn them back, not on your terms, but on the truth they could no longer deny. So stand tall, my friends. When that message comes, when that knock on the door arrives, when the "Hey stranger" lights up your screen, don't forget what brought it there. It wasn't luck. It wasn't chance. It wasn't them suddenly becoming wiser. It was your silence and the unshakable strength you found in it. And so, my friends, here's the truth. We've come full circle. What began as silence, what felt like loss, has revealed itself as your greatest strength. Their pride cracked, regret grew, and in the end, silence pulled them back. Remember, it wasn't chasing, it wasn't words, it was the discipline of staying still that flipped the story. Hold on to that power, because it's yours now. Say it with me. Silence is strength. Write it in the comments so it burns into your mind. Press that like button, share this with someone who needs it, and subscribe, because your journey of power is only beginning.